Today we're going to briefly look at the new institutional tuning PAF in the state of California that goes into effect January 1st, 2017 and requires acceptance testing. So, what is this? How is a technician supposed to know whether it's in play? What do the compliance forms tell him about it so that he can do his job? And what does he have to do? Let's have a brief intro here. The California reference documents we'll look at really quickly, then advent of artificial lighting, then something called Lumen maintenance. This is where a lighting level is set in an area and maintained through a variety of control schemes. We have certificates of installation that are associated with this PAF, and then of course there's the institutional tuning power adjustment factor itself. Now, you're going to need to look in certain code manuals so that you know what you're doing. The first one is the Building Energy Efficiency Standards, and it stipulates that acceptance testing is required for institutional tuning. The second, the reference joint appendices, have the actual alleged specifications for doing the testing in NA 7.7. There is also a non-residential compliance manual, and in the manual you will find the forms that we're going to talk about. The certificates of compliance, certificates of installation, and of course the certificate of acceptance that the acceptance test technician must fill out and sign. And we see here that an acceptance test technician has to perform non-residential lighting controls acceptance tests when required by law and complete his forms, but before the field technician can do this, they have to find the proper compliance and installation forms and know where they are when they are doing their testing on the building plans. So, ever since early man first strapped a flaming fruit bat on a stick to light his cave, he's been wondering how to control the lighting that he's using, and in the case of a flaming fruit bat, how to get his cave to quit from smelling like a flaming fruit bat. Well, one way to do it was to use lamp oil. That's why whales were hunted. Oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, but it needed to be refined into kerosene. And then, of course, we had gas lighting and gas mantles. But now we have electric lighting, which gives us the luxury of having the Illumination Engineering Society of North America specify recommended lighting levels. But now that we're all spoiled with this artificial lighting, electric lighting, as it were, we are looking for ways that we might be able to reduce the lighting and bring it to a design level that we feel is comfortable or energy efficient in an area. Now, we have to take into mind the rated life of the lamps that we will be affecting when we are reducing the lighting level in an area. Fluorescent lamp life is the rated life of fluorescent lamps based on the failure of 1/2 of a sample group. LEDs are different, okay? An LED is assumed to have, at least a general lighting LED, luminaire, is considered to have reached the end of its life when it has dimmed down by 30% of its initially installed illumination. Now, if we want to reduce that initially installed illumination, we are probably talking dimmable drivers. In fact, we will be talking dimmable drivers. And we're talking tuning. And according to the Building Energy Efficiency Standards, tuning is the ability to set the maximum light levels at a lower level than full lighting power. In other words, you turn them down. And this can be done with a hard cap on the top end, or it can be done using Lumen maintenance schemes, which we will briefly discuss. Institutional tuning can be done by adjusting the top end with a hard cap or using automatic or manual Lumen maintenance techniques. Institutional tuning is the process of adjusting the maximum light output of lighting systems to support visual needs or save energy. This is straight from the Section 100.1 of the Building Energy Efficiency Standards in California. It's got to be the 2016 version. This doesn't appear in the 2013 version. And unauthorized personnel should not be able to limit that top end of the lighting. This is not a very good definition, but we're not going to go into it now. I think we all get the idea. You install the lighting and you tune it down on the top end, and it either automatically corrects over time, or it is manually corrected, or it is not, and it simply dims down over time as usual, and that can be a problem for a building owner. Here we see two definitions of Lumen maintenance that come out of the code manuals. This one comes out of what's called slang name Title 20. It's actually the 2015 Appliance Efficiency Regulations and is part of Chapter 4 of the Title 20 regulations in the state of California. Lumen maintenance can either be lamp dim down data, which we show here, or it can be a control system to compensate for the lamps dimming down in a luminaire over time. Okay, so we've got two different definitions for Lumen maintenance. Here we see a DOE lighting facts label that actually shows Lumen maintenance data. It says you're going to dim down approximately just shy of 5% every 25,000 hours if everything is kept at room temperature. Okay, LEDs will tend to dim down faster, in some cases a lot faster, over time at higher elevated temperatures. Here is a Lumen maintenance control system that is automatic. It uses a closed loop photosensor, and it is set to provide a certain amount of lighting in the room. And as the luminaires age, the controller will crank it up to take up that slack, that top end where it has been tuned down, and hold that design level of luminance in the room. Other methods include manual. By one fashion or another, the lighting in an area, in a non-residential function area, has been turned down on the top end, and it has to be checked periodically and readjusted, or it's just going to keep going down. Now, if that's the case, you've basically stolen, if you will, quote, stolen, unquote, that amount of illumination from the building owner, which will cause the building owner to have to replace lamps or luminaires more frequently. Scheduled is an extremely difficult technique, depending on the operating system of the lighting control system. And in this scheme, you would tell the lighting control system to slowly increase power to the lamps over time, basically based on the hours that they are used or an estimate of the hours they are used. And then automatic uses a closed loop photosensor and simply adjusts itself to attempt to hold the room at design level. So any three of these techniques, manual, scheduled, or automatic, could be used to claim a Lumen maintenance type of institutional tuning power adjustment factor. Now, an automatic Lumen maintenance system might be built into a closed loop daylighting system so that you get both daylighting action and a design level under no daylight conditions that is maintained by the closed loop photosensor. According to the code, an acceptance test technician needs to use the procedures or specifications in the reference non-residential appendices. In the case of institutional tuning, it is NA 7.7, which is installation inspections, systems and EMCS, and power adjustment factors, which is what institutional tuning is. There is no "thou shalt install institutional tuning control" in the current code, and it is a power adjustment factor, which is an optional tool for a designer, and it would be added in if selected for use or set up for use on top of all the other indoor controls that would be affecting an indoor luminaire. There was, in January 2016, no checkoff for this new institutional tuning form on Certificate of Compliance number 1 for indoor lighting, but it is there now. So there will be a checkoff showing here on NRCC-LTI-01E that says somebody has installed institutional tuning and an acceptance test technician needs to go and verify that they have done it correctly. Surprise! There's an install form entry for these as well. We'll talk about these in a second. Many people still don't even know that install forms exist. Well, we'll talk about them briefly. NRCI forms are not signed by the acceptance test technician unless he was actually the person responsible for, we'll just say, the installation of designs, features, and manufactured components. However, the fact that this PAF is required to be tested by acceptance test technicians appears on the NRCI form and also in the code. As you will be using dimming luminaires, you will be able to find your minimum control requirements and steps and whatnot in Table 130.1-A, which bases the minimum number of steps or whether continuous dimming is required for a type of luminaire based on the luminaire type, its technology, and the amount of wattage per luminaire. Everywhere else in the code, controls are based on where the luminaire is located, so some conflicts may result. Here we see our new institutional tuning power adjustment factor acceptance testing form. There are 2 other power adjustment factors that are required to be tested. These are required basically to be tested by law, the institutional tuning, because it appears in 130.4, and the full off daylighting controls. This is where daylighting controls actually turn all the lighting off at a certain bright level, at a certain bright condition, and this is shown in the reference appendices under section NA 7.6, so that's like a legal requirement. This one, power adjustment factors for large open plan offices, is a little more dubious because it does not appear in 130.4 nor in NA 7.6. Nonetheless, that appears on the shutoff controls form for technicians, and therefore is a real thing that they will want to check because it is on their form. Power adjustment factors may be found on Table 140.6-A. Here's daylight dimming plus off, occupant sensing controls in large open plan offices, institutional tuning, and if you are voluntarily putting in demand response, there is a PAF for that too. Institutional tuning has 2 different power adjustment factor levels depending on whether it is a day-lit space or not. In other words, if this tuning is a component of an automatic daylighting system or not. On our good friend Certificate of Compliance number 2 for indoor lighting, we would find that a power adjustment factor has been checked off. Here would be where the control credits are calculated based on the amount of installed wattage in the area, and here it is required that this be documented appropriately by the designer. So once again, we have a closed loop system, and we can set the design illuminance, if you will, in the space, the design full output, using the controls, and it should maintain them, and that would give you an automatic lumen maintenance system, and there's no reason why that could not be claimed as institutional tuning by a designer. So institutional tuning, let's take a quickie look here. We have, once again, our second certificate of compliance for lighting, and somebody's going to really need to tell you what's going on inside the space on this little bitty line. It needs to let you know that institutional tuning is in play, and it should be checked, acceptance testing required, if the lights have been tuned down by more than 15% in the area. Here is the install form, NRCI LTI 05E, where they tell you that the tune down must be sufficient so that the tune down lighting level is 85% of what you could get out of the lights without that tuning. And here we see that the setting of the limit must be checked by an acceptance test technician. It says it's an acceptance test. Once again, there is now a checkoff for the designer to inform you that institutional tuning is being used somewhere on a project. And here would be a hard cap that's been placed in a daylighting system, which still has some automatic lumen maintenance. This would have to be closed loop to function this way. And this automatic lumen maintenance might extend all the way from what you would call the reference illumination or design full output all the way up to what the lamps are capable of. Or there could be a combination of a hard cap and automatic lumen maintenance. Either way, this could be claimed for institutional tuning. Here's one where we simply have a hard cap placed on an interior office that has a manual dimmer. You can now find manual dimmers that have both top and bottom trim. However, bear in mind that if this is set with hardware and you don't come back and adjust it from this design full output, then the lighting has no place to go in the room over time but down. And this much illumination has basically been stolen from the building owner. So, 130.4 makes this testing a legal requirement. Area controls can't override it. The setting can only be changed by authorized personnel. The maximum output has to be 85% or less than what the lighting is capable of. There are two ways to check it for an acceptance test technician: after the institutional tuning was installed, or while it's being installed. They can simply observe. You also have an option of current or illuminance tests interchangeably. And automatic lumen maintenance could be claimed as a PAF. So, if you have any more questions about institutional tuning, you can contact California Electrical Training for NLCAA acceptance test technician training. Then you're just going to be a big expert on everything that acceptance test technicians have to check, and also things that they are not required to check, which might be even more valuable to you as a designer.